Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
I would love to go a little deeper into that because you've given a couple of great examples of one, knowing your players. You talked about how you sit around and talk about, we can get onto this guy, we can't get onto this guy. So knowing your players, but then also knowing your team. Because for me, when I hear the ice cream story with the cake, golly, in my heart, I'm thinking, please practice. But there's a risk in that. Like, what if they don't? Is that really the team that we have? Like, how do I come back from this? So I say, you guys should have practiced, so how do you get to the place where you do know your players that well and you do know your team that well?
You have to spend time with them, and my dad always had us over Thanksgiving, Christmas, and he always put on the assistants a lot because you got to be careful as a head coach. You can't be buddy, but your assistants can be, but you can't be a stranger either. There's a fine line as a head coach, but you got to be around your kids. I mean, my dad was always in the office, always when guys were working out, he'd work them out himself, or if they're working out with an assistant, he'd come down there, work with them, and he was always talking to the assistants. He'd bring them, have a player come in, and my dad had a great rule, and I stick to it. He never came to your apartment or dorm. That was your place of privacy, because he knew, he was at Ohio State. They had fun, and so you never had to worry about him coming there. And if he wanted to see you, you came to the office or, went to his house. And he did the same to the locker room. He only came to the locker room when it was like, okay, before practice, and game time. He was like, he always said players need to have their space. But he was always around, though. He wasn't like he was never in the office. And so he got a good feel for the players, bring them in, talk to them, come down while they're working out. So to me, you just got to be around them. But it's amazing how many guys aren't around them.
Yeah.
And don't get to know them, and don't talk to their assistants about, what are you hearing? And my dad would tell the team too, and I do it too. Look, there's probably things you don't want the head coach to know. I get it. Tell the assistants. And the assistants don't, and my dad told his assistants, I tell mine, you don't have to tell me everything because I don't need it. That's why we have good assistants. But you have to be around them. You got to have them out to the house, I think. You have to be around the office. You have to be around the gym when they're in there. You got to be the guy that's rebounding and working them out just to get a feel for them. But it's also a fine line because, you got to be able to be the one to discipline them. And like my dad always told guys, hey, there are going to be times you don't like me, but when you graduate, I'll be the best friend you ever have. But while you're here, I have to be an extension of your parents. I got to be the one to tell you things you don't like and get you to go to class, get you to graduate, and, get you to become, and it wasn't just becoming the best player, you'd be the best man you can be. But again, you just got to be around them. And that's what we try. I've already had my team. We go to rugby. We went to a rugby game together. We worked the women's soccer game the other night. We're going to the football game. And that's how we were as a team. Coach would be like, hey, so, the girls are playing tonight. You got to go. Hey, football. You just got to, everything's got to be done as a team. And you don't have to all like each other. It's about disrespecting each other enough. When it becomes game time, you guys are there for each other. But it just doesn't happen when it's separate. And that's one bad thing about the NBA. You really don't have that. And that's what's so great about college. You can set up events, have the players over, have things for them to do, be around them in the office. Hey, you got an hour in between class. Hey, why don't you come see us? Let's talk. Watch film with. My dad loved watching film with players. And he'd bring them one-on-one. And it's just stuff like that is really a bonding situation. But you have to be around them. I mean, that's the whole thing. And that's what they asked me about this job. when I was interviewed. Are you going to be around? Are you just going to use it? I was like, well, where else am I going to be? I mean, this how you got to be in the office arena. That's where you learn about your team, and be around and work them out. I don't have. We'd have managers rebound and stuff, but my dad always liked there had to be a coach there, and that's it. And it's pretty simple, really, if you think about it. But it's amazing how many people don't want to do it. And I get it, because you get caught up, especially being head coach. We got to speak, we got to go raise money, and sometimes it can kind of, oh shoot, I got to meet with so and so. Oh, he's in the gym, let me go. But you got to do it, and plus these kids want to see you, and plus if they don't, it also keeps them on edge and makes them work harder. But the bottom line is you just got to be around them all over the place. But like my dad, I stay away from the dorms, apartments, in the locker room.
Yeah. And I really love the balance that you talked about there, because I do think, coaches can take either extreme too far. I rarely saw Coach Bliss. I think it was just practice. That was the only time we saw, and there was this level of almost like, there he is, like of respect or fear at times factor, but never a closeness. So very transactional in a lot of ways with that relationship. And I was close to him. I was probably closer to him than most of the guys were. And so I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it was the feeling. But then you could go the other route, which is you're their buddy and there is no boundary. And then the level, like what sticks out with me about the Andre story and that night was how extreme the butt chewing was, and it was at a level that it only had to happen one time. But like if you're worried about being their best friend, then you can't hold that level of, or if they like you, you can't hold that level of discipline. So transactional versus transformational. Transformational to me sounds like you're around them for the important parts and you're active in their life and you are approachable, but there's a balance to it.
Yeah, even like when I have them over, I'm not down there playing pool with them and stuff. That's their time, but I'm there. It's my house, and I'll go down. And that's how Coach was. You got to have that deal. But then what was great seeing my dad when those guys were done playing for him to come visit. Oh my God! I mean, he's taking them fishing. They go, I mean, he's just, like just one of the guys now. But you just can't do that. I hear stories of guys going to the dorm room, hang out with the guys. You got to have your space. And like you said, you got to have that level of like, oh shoot, it's Coach.
Yeah.
And I tell my kids when I recruit them, my dad did the same thing. There are going to be times you don't like me, but I'm here for you. You come to me anytime. But I got to be the one to do the discipline. But when you're done, that's when we become friends. And that's another thing guys don't do. Once you get done with most guys playing for them, you'll never hear from them again. They're done with it. And schools are the same way. I mean, it's amazing. Like some schools you check, hey, no, they only hit me up for money. It's just amazing that was so great. Well, my dad built at Indiana, and then he started doing it at Tech, because he heard, guys hadn't been heard from the school in 10 years or whatever, except for like money, because Mike Leach was actually the one that warned us about it, because he was there the year before and was like, hey, they haven't done a good job keeping track of the alumni.
Wow.
And Mike started sending, got the whole list of, the old football rosters. He was sending them Texas Tech gear, and they were like, they never got that before. And so, but my dad had always done that at Indiana, and that's why, alumni night, I mean, every practice game, players were coming back. And that's what we want to do here. We've already reached out to all the old Marian players.
Nice.
Come back. Our practices are open. You got to get that going. But a lot of schools don't do that. And a lot of coaches, don't do that. Once you're done playing for them, you're done. And the great thing about my dad was it didn't matter if you're the number one guy or the 13th guy. You were his guy. And I think that's another thing you have to be careful about. Everybody wants to be wanted. They want to feel appreciated. And you have to treat all your players the same, with this level of respect and working with them. I mean, I don't care who it was. Come in, when I was playing in Indiana, I was like the ninth guy. I come in, coach would work me out, one of the assistants worked me out. They weren't like, oh, shoot, it's Pat. No, it didn't matter if you were Calvert Chaney or Pat Knight, they're going to work your ass off. But again, there's a lot of people who don't do that. They're select 5 guys, but it's a whole team deal, and everybody's got to feel included.
Coach Drew did an amazing job with that, and he's done that for the last 20 plus years at Baylor. And my first year there, and he knows this, and I've talked about this before, so it's not like revealing anything, but I was very jaded towards coaches after what had happened there. And so he came in as a 32-year-old, and I was a pleaser, but basically more just showing up and going through the motions. And I was very resistant to what he was selling, which was joy. I mean, he came in smiling, the exact opposite of what I'd had for 3 years, but you kind of get used to that. But here's my thing. I went to Iceland for a year, came back. I didn't go back to a Baylor game for a few years. And part of me thought they don't really want me or anybody from that era, the dark days, around. And that was just in my head. Nobody ever said anything. I went to a game down there, and he saw me after the game. I kind of came down to the edge of the floor. He saw me from across the way, walked straight over and gave me the biggest hug, and made me think that, like, I was one of his guys, even though it was just that 1 year. And he's done a phenomenal job. He has a vets text group that we're all on, and every week or every couple weeks we'll get something from him on there. That I do feel like it's rare, but it's a great reminder for all of us to do.
No, and he's a great example. I mean, no one knows this. I actually got kicked off the IU team for public intoxication, and I was transferred to Valpo to play for Homer and Scott. Scott recruited me because 2 of my buddies were transferred back. So I've known Scott forever, and just the job. I mean, I saw it firsthand when he took over. And he's always been that person, man. High energy. And that's what that situation needed. And he's he was a good coach then, but his level of coaching now, it's elite. And I've seen it firsthand. That's one place I went to every year for practice because I always had the players, but I enjoyed being around him, his energy, and he's legit, man. And it's been fun watching him grow up as not a person. He's always been that person, but just watch his coaching, man. I mean, his practices are by far some of the best I've seen. His X's and O's, and so, but that's him, man. He makes you feel like when I go there, I feel great, man, because you fly down there. I got to drive from Austin to Waco. You're not in the greatest mood, because you're driving, you're by yourself.
And it's Waco,
I believe they're feeling great, man. Just talk to him and the energy he brings. But he's a rarity because like you said, a lot of these places, and he's one of those guys, you just had to play for him for 1 year. And my dad's the same way. I mean, I won't name the name, but someone was asking, like, how many guys did your dad fail with? Like, get him over the hump. And there was one guy that had a gambling addiction. And this is like, like when I was born, this is like those early teams that I think he only had him for like 1 year, inherited him. And even towards the end, when my dad could still remember the teams with Alzheimer's, he'd bring this guy up. And I'd be like, Dad, he really won your guy. You didn't recruit him. Nah, he's my guy because I coached him. He's like, I got him this job, that job. And I just got that gambling. And it amazed me that this guy, he inherited. But to him, he had him for 1 year, and it still drove him nuts. Honestly, probably a year before he died. He couldn't help this guy. And that's early 70s, what are you talking about, 50 years? Wow. But you will find guys like that, and you found one and Scott, but it's a rarity. It's just it's kind of sad. And now it's really a rarity. I mean, everybody's, out for themselves, it's like, and with this NIL stuff, people ask me, like, well, how would your dad have been? I was like, he'd have been against it, but then everyone would have gotten paid, the managers, every player, he'd been hitting up guys like Tony La Russa, Bill Parsons, hey, send me $100,000, we would have been all taken care of, but he wouldn't have forgot the school, he'd have still raised money for the library, the faculty. But how many of these guys are doing that? No, it's all about their teams. They just need the money for the team. And I bet there's not even a handful of guys that are still helping out the university because they need that money for the players. But I guarantee my dad would never lost sight of the schools. You know, if the science department need money, he would have raised money for them, you know, even though he needed money for the NIL. And so I tell people, yeah, he'd have been against it. It's like the 3-point shot. He was the last guy to concede, but what's he do? You recruit Steve Alford and you win a national championship. So
it worked out okay.
We would have been well paid, but the school would have he would still help raise money for the school, not just basketball.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.